In this video, we're going to talk about place value and word names for numbers, so reading really big numbers specifically. I highly encourage you to use your place value chart, whether it's one you have at school or one you're using online. And remember, like we talked about at school, that if you're reading a number properly, we only use and when we're talking about the decimal point. So if I was going to say a number like 31 and 5/10. Notice I'm reading it 31 and 5, and I say tenths because that's where I end. So yes, these are have some small numbers in it. We'll read more decimals in the next section, but they might appear in this section as well. So our question says, in 2,068,534 and in which place is the sixth? So the easiest way to go about this is to write our number into our place value chart and then figure out which column the 6 is in. So when I'm doing this, I usually start, if I'm writing it on a place value chart, from where the decimal is. So I actually think this is supposed to be a comma. But remember, after any whole number, so if you see the number 4, for example, there's an invisible decimal. Because we're just saying whole number 4, it's not necessary to write 0.000. You could do that, it wouldn't change the number, but we don't have to. So we usually just write 4. So we can imagine our invisible decimal is here. So I'm going to start by putting the 4 to the left of the actual visible decimal on our place value chart. Then I'm going to go ahead and fill in the numbers. So I have 4, 3, 5. So this is our ones period. Notice that includes the hundreds. Then we have the thousands period, the millions period. You can imagine there'd be a billions period next. And over here we have our decimals. So I'm going to keep filling it in. In the thousands period, I have an 8, a 6, which obviously we're interested in, 0, and then a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you how I'd read this for the future. 2 million. Then I look at the thousands period. 68,534 and. Ms. Cooper, don't we say ones? No, you don't have to say that name. We just have to indicate this 2 is saying we have 2 millions. 68, we have 68,000s. And then in the ones, we have 534 and. So now let's go back to our question, which is asking us which place is the 6 in. Obviously our 6 is over here. Be careful, some of you might get fooled and want to say tens. It's in the 10,000s. So on your answer, the 10,000s. On this next example, we're focusing rather than on the place value, more on the reading aspect. How do you write this number using digits? 6,552. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in. First, I notice I have 6,000. So I'm going to put a 6 in the thousands period. Be careful, it needs to go in the ones section there because it's just 6,000. It's not 60, which we obviously then put 6 and a 0, and it's not 600 where we put 600. I highly encourage you to take your hands, and it's really hard for me to show you this, but to cover up the ones period and the millions period when you're writing that number in, and just write 6. Okay, now I'm looking at the ones period, so I'd go ahead and cover up the decimals and the thousands, and I want to write 552. So I'm going to write that in, 552. They don't say and, but there's the invisible and, that invisible decimal right there. So now I'm just comparing 6552 decimal 6552. Obviously, it's this one here at the end. And the last example we're going to look at in this video says, how do you write this number using words? So there's a lot of big, scary sort of wordings here. I think we should start just by writing it in our place value chart. So remembering our invisible decimal is after our last whole number, which is that 3 there. So the decimal over here is there. So I'm going to fill in the numbers, working from the decimal to from the right to the left. So that's 3 3, 5, 9, 7, 6. Something I like about the way they've written this is they've let that gap in between the different periods. I would really encourage you when you're writing large numbers to leave a gap. Sometimes kids are taught to put commas in there, but a sloppy comma can look a lot like a decimal, or sometimes even I've seen commas that look like ones. I find it's much easier for kids if you keep spaces when you're writing big numbers. Now I didn't finish filling it in, so I'm going to put in that 6 and the 9. So now when I'm reading this, I'm saying, first, I'm covering my hand over these ones. I'm just looking at the millions. 96 million. So I'm going to look, that says 96 million, that does, and that one. Okay, so that doesn't help us that much. 679, because we're only looking at one period at a time. 679,000. Oh, well, that one's wrong. That doesn't say 600. This one says 679,000. That one's right. 671,000. That one's wrong. And this one's 96 million. 500. So we pretty much already solved it, but let's double check the last part. Now covering up the thousands, covering up the decimals, just looking at this. 533. 533. Yep, so let's double check. 96 million, 679,000, 679,000, 533, 533, and our invisible decimal, and. One thing to just pay a little bit of attention to in the terms of the wording here, so we solved that one, by the way. If you are using iExcel to do this, or potentially another math online program, something to be aware of is when you have to type in the answers, which I hope you don't have to do too much of, it is sensitive to the grammar you use. Notice when they say numbers like 96, 33, 71, they have a dash in the middle, or hyphen. You do need to write that. If you are writing it in a math book for me, or on a quiz in pencil, I would not mark you wrong in any way, shape, or form for spelling it wrong or for forgetting the dash. However, because the computer program is, although it's very clever, it's not as clever as a human brain, it does not necessarily recognize that. If you are having a lot of frustration with the computer marking you down and your score lowering, contact me privately, whether that's in the classroom or on the chat, and we'll talk about how you can just move on. Because if you're getting them right, you're just spelling it wrong or something, that's not a big deal in terms of your math understanding. Okay, good luck on this section.